Well, just real quick on RJP Darlie Routier case, episode 44. Just listening to this right here real quick. And I like it how that these supporters just make things up out of the air. And this one's not on Rich. This one is on Kathy. Uh, you had to consider, before I play this clip, that the police, didn't follow any leads. They didn't look anywhere but Darlie. They had tunnel vision and they were just focused on Darlie. Remember that before you listen to this.
Bits and pieces, but if you're going to stage the evidence, why not give a complete, makeup of what the intruder looked like from head to toe? Why not do that? Why even?
She had full reign to do that if she was making it up. She had the full reign of her own imagination.
That's right.
To make up whatever she wanted to make up.
Anything she wanted
but she didn't, because she didn't know.
Now, I want to tell an interesting
Well,
story.
what happened was she couldn't really give them a description, so they gave her books to look at, whatever.
They gave her books to look at. They set her down at the police station and gave her books of possible suspects to take a look at. This is what Kathy's claiming, Annie Oakley.
Whatever the photo books to go through. And she ended up.
So if they did that, which I don't believe she did. I don't know where she got this from. I don't know where it came from. I've never heard this before. And I've looked at just about everything that's got Darlie's name on it. So if they did that, that means that right off the rip, they weren't thinking about Darlie. They didn't have tunnel vision. Because they say, hey, sit down, let's look at these suspects. Right? That means that they were trying to investigate somewhere else. This didn't happen. She's making this up.
Almost describing to a T exactly. I mean, even the clothing that they were wearing, someone that had been in the books. So
now she says she almost describes someone that had been in the books. How do you almost describe somebody? This is the first I've ever heard of this, Rich and Kathy. You kind of, when you make up little stories like this, Kathy, about them sitting her down at the police department and having her go through books, you contradict yourselves. Why would they waste their time on having her look at some books if they had tunnel vision? You keep saying James Cron. After 20 minutes, they didn't look anywhere. They focused right on Darlie. And how could they have her look? What would she be looking at books, people of what kind of people? What kind of crimes are these people committing? If she's looking at, a photo lineup, how would they know what books to give her to look at? Sex crimes, burglars, robbers, kids that thieve the neighborhood. That's a damn lie, Kathy.
She ended up making up somebody after she had looked at all kinds of criminals' faces. And so she, as far as her changing stories, Darlie, if you really want to solve this crime and be objective about it, just use a little common sense.
That's what we do. And there is, you don't use common sense when you make up these stories. She never looked through a lineup book. I've never heard of that. If she could have looked at, if she looked at a lineup book, that means that they were pursuing other avenues. I don't believe for 1 minute, because she couldn't give a description. Dark hair, baseball cap, black shirt, black pants. That's all she's ever given. She didn't mention eyeballs, nothing. She didn't mention a light beard, nothing. Then they go into, well, she just can't remember. She couldn't give a good description. She just can't remember. But let's listen to more.
That's all.
Everybody is bleeding on
And they
things.
also
Okay.
say they also say that if you make up a perpetrator, for instance, in a crime, so if you make someone up, psychologically, you will use this is what Diane Downs, I believe, did. You will use descriptions that are pretty similar to yourself if you're the actual perpetrator. So, and
Yep.
none of what Darlie mentioned sounds anything like.
Where did you get that from? I don't understand that. Yeah, I was laying there on the couch, and a big-breasted, blonde-headed girl came in with a knife and slit my throat and killed my kids. It can't be anything like herself. It has to be a man.
Darlie.
Yeah. Now, I must tell this story because this is a story from Darlie Lynn that me and Bonnie were able to get from her about the glass from the broken wine glass. So, or that should be broken wine glass. Well, yeah, whatever. Okay. So I asked Darlie Lynn about that, and I said, "When did you hear that glass break?" She goes, "Rich, I don't really know that I actually heard glass break." She told me, she said, "Rich, I had a throw rug that was right by where the wine rack was," which she's telling the truth about. If you look at the crime scenes, you can see the throw rug.
That's right. The pictures, black rug. Danelle has this story about everybody used to slip up on that rug. They used to kind of trip on it, but you never wanted to get rid of it because it matched the rack.
She said, "Rich, I hated that damn thing. I kept meaning to throw it away. I don't even know why I kept it around, but I did because everybody would trip on it." And she goes, "And how I could tell people trip on it, they'd end up catching it with their shoe or their foot, and it would roll up a little bit at the end, where they'd catch it with their foot." She said when she had gotten up, okay, and was kind of walking after, or, looking for the intruder, walking around, she heard glasses go ding, 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 just dinging. But she said she didn't hear anything break. But she also said that she was kind of out of it. But she don't remember hearing anything break. She remembers hearing him digging as if somebody bumped into the wine rack.
I remember the top of the wine rack also had little trinkets on top of it. Little like, shakers and little knickknacks on top of it is the best way to say it. None of those had moved from their original position. So if somebody would have bumped in it, you would have expected, one of those to fall over or move backwards or move something. But none of them moved from their original position. Now he's saying that she heard the ding, ding, ding from the glasses. You know how quiet that would mean they all were bouncing off of each other. But this is a story from Darlie.
She said when she got there, one of the first things she noticed is that rug was rolled up a little bit on the end. She believes that the intruder kind of got a little tipsy walking by there.
She noticed that rug was rolled up. She noticed that.
Tripped and rolled the rug up, and he bumped into the glass rack, or the wine glass rack.
Well, remember, Cron testified that they shook it, they pushed it, they bumped it, and they could not make a glass fall out.
I've got another few things about that as well, about
Yeah.
the wine glass. So if Darlie had staged the scene, okay, let's for a minute say that she staged the scene. She broke that glass to make it look like an intruder had been there. They found no prints on that glass, so it's more than likely that it was knocked out of the wine rack, then it was taken and smashed on the floor. Because
or the print, the place where she smacked it at, with her oils and salts from her fingers, hit the ground and shattered. You're not going to find a fingerprint on that part because it's shattered.
There was no fingerprints. There was no fingerprints on the stem. There was no fingerprints on the pieces of glass. And also,
So they were investigating. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to get, if it's a bunch of thousands of pieces, you wouldn't be able to get a fingerprint.
there was no blood on the glass. So Darlie would have had to have smashed the glass after she'd cut her own neck. So how did she do that without getting her blood on the wine rack and on the glasses or the glass that was there? Because she's right-handed. Her arm was already bleeding by that point.
Just smack it with your other hand. If she didn't have blood on her fingertips or on her hands, which is logical to me because she had a sock on. She had a sock on her hand.
Remember, she had the cut to her right arm, right through to the bone. Where was the blood on the? Why wasn't there blood all over the wine rack or on that glass,
And here's
or
another
her
good point.
fingerprints at least?
Well, you all right? Then you can put it this way too. She had a splurting wound coming from her neck, right? So you would expect that if she was over at the sink and she's getting towels for Darren and she's on the phone, she can't be on the phone getting towels for Darren and holding a rag to her own neck at the same time. You'd expect to see how did she get to that sink and not get splurting blood all over the faucet or splurting blood all over the counters. The luminol showed that the counters had been wiped off. Just because there wasn't blood on that wine rack doesn't mean anything to me.
This is a real good point to make. Now, the non-supporters will say, well, maybe she broke the glass before she cut herself. Why the hell would she break that glass before? Yeah, because Darren would have.
But then Darren heard the glass. He would have come down and seen her cutting herself. Then she wouldn't have had enough time to do
What are you told on her if you did?
that before. So that's why I'm saying,
anyway.
no, you'd have to. She would have had to do it afterwards.
In my opinion, I don't think that there would have to be blood on that wine rack for her to have smacked it out there. I don't think there would have had to been blood on the glass either. And, she didn't get in a physical fight with the wine rack or the glass.
You'd have had to do it afterwards because Darren was already at the top of the stairs and down the stairs by then. She wouldn't have had time to try slit her own throat and stab herself in the other arm and change hands and do all the.
I agree with her there. If Darren heard the wine break and the glass break, and he came down immediately, she wouldn't have had time. I agree with that. I believe that while she was on the phone getting ready to call 911, that she could have smacked that wine rack out of there because she stood at the end of the bar near the wine rack for the whole time that people were taking care of her children.
This other stuff that she supposedly did and knocked the table over and slipped the screen and when did she do all of this stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, she did all that as soon as Darren went to bed. She slipped out that slide glass door and cut that screen from the outside, right? She went around to that window. She went around the side of the house, cut it, and then slipped back in. Kids are asleep. She can push the table over while the kids are still asleep. She can do a lot of that staging before the killing.
And go bleed by the couch and lay down on her pillow and bleed. And no, if you want to solve this crime, you're going to have to just look at it from, I got to follow the blood. There was an original spot where somebody was injured, and then they moved around the crime scene. So let me take all the locations I have X person's blood. Let me take all the locations I have Y person's blood. Let me take off, just like they did on the blood map. But if you listen to Darlie's story, as far as she doesn't know what happened during the attack, but shortly after awakening is when she reports getting up. Okay, so she reports getting up at what location? The couch. So do we have a blood trail and any blood pooling by the couch? Yes, we do. We have blood pooling by the couch. We don't have a whole
Right.
lot on the couch, but then again, she's laying on it. The
She's
blood's going
laying
to
on the
be
couch.
fresh.
Yeah.
Right. The blood's going to be
That's
freshly
that's what I
flowing. It's not
always
going to
say.
have
Like they
totally.
say, oh, there wasn't blood on the couch, but why would there be? Darlie was lying on the couch. There would be a void mark, which you can clearly see there is, because do you remember we see the blood that's dripping down the couch? That's likely from her arm.
This supporter you talk to, because Danelle says that Cron looked at the wrong couch, and there was plenty of blood on the couch.
Her right arm. So when she sits up, that's when that blood got onto the couch. Do you see what I mean? So, but there's not going to be any blood underneath her, is there? If there's a pillow there and her whole body is covering the couch,
Why not? Her whole body's not as big as the couch. She's a little woman.
why would there be blood? A lot of the time in blood spatter analysis, what's more important is the lack of blood. Where is there a lack of blood? It's not always about where blood is. Sometimes it's about where there's a lack of blood present.
It's like a photographic negative. You have to look for the voids. You have to see what's in the voids. That's how they can tell
Right,
somebody was standing there when a gun went off, because there's a void in the blood spatter.
right.
So, and also too, if there was a struggle and she was bleeding during the struggle, any blood that got behind her or got on the couch when she lay back down or was forced back down would have gotten onto the back of her shirt. And that's where I think that the smear, because the blood was running down to the corded edge of the couch cushion. And when she was forced back down, then her shirt.
She doesn't say anything about being forced back down. She doesn't say anything about he pushed me back down. She does not say that.
Absorbed that. That's where you get more of the, and it was wrinkled up. So that's where you get a lot of her blood transfer is from that.
Except for she never mentioned being pushed back down.
From, because those are transfer stains on the back of her shirt at the lower back.
She's talking about the two stains that looked like she had a knife behind her back, a bloody knife.
Do
Yeah,
you know
but
which
I
ones I'm
believe that.
talking about, Tara?
Yeah, but I believe a lot of those transfer stains were made when they collected the evidence because they did not let that shirt dry. And what they did, they scrunched it up and stuck it in a bag. And no one knows who did what with it until it was collected by what's his name, Maine. Until Maine had collected it from the fire station, no one knows what happened with it. The guy who actually collected it from the ambulance, he was also a member of the fire department, and he took it there. Now, there's no chain of custody. No one knows what he did with it
You
in
just described the chain of custody.
that time. All they know is that he'd shoved
So now you have a fire department person that's messing around with the evidence.
it in a bag because when Maine went to get it, it was crumpled up in the bottom of the bag and there was blood at the bottom of the bag. So that means
I don't know where she got that from. We'll see. Crumpled up. I don't know where she got that from. Where that came out.
that shirt was still wet, which obviously it it like messes with the facts. It messes with the where the blood was. That's why you have to air dry these items, these important items, to be able to tell where the blood was originally.
She's right because if it probably take for I would assume that was a cotton shirt. and it had massive amounts of blood on it. I would assume that for it to dry, it would take probably 3 to 4 hours for it to completely dry, and that's if it's set out, hung up to dry. But little small spots of blood, they can dry in like 10 minutes. It's the amount of blood that would have took that a while to dry.
And because he did that, that sort of muddies the water a lot with, with about where about where them transfer stains come.
I don't think so, because I don't think that there's any evidence of smearing, foldovers. I don't think there's any evidence of that on that shirt. They could have had Vince DiMaio mention that.
From, because it's highly likely if there's blood at the bottom of that bag that shirt was still wet with blood, and some of that blood.
I don't know where she's got any proof that there was blood at the bottom of that bag, but if what she's saying is true, then it's an issue. I mean, the blood, that shirt should not have had any of Devin and Damon's blood on it, because she did not go near them to take help. She didn't. And supporters, they always talk about the spots of blood that Tom Bevel marked on the back of her shirt. They always talk about that, but what they don't want to talk about so much is the same type of spots of Devin and Damon's blood that are on the front of her shirt where she was doing the upswing. You have the upswing and then the backswing. The upswing and the backswing. So she's got it on the front and the back.
Blood had transferred from the back of the collar onto the lower back of the shirt. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the straight line appearance would be the edge of the baggie.
Whatever she.
Right.
You know what I mean? That because I was thinking about the edges there where you have a void where others have said, "Oh, that's a knife imprint." Well, you know what I mean? There's two straight edges there.
Yeah.
So it's like a fold.
Well, no, I
So
don't believe
like you
that.
were
Let me
talking
get
about
a
it being
picture of the shirt.
crumpled.
So here's the back of Darlie's night shirt. Some of these indicate where Devin and Dane was. But I don't know what the green and the blue or the yellow means, because I'm not. That's not where I'm at. I don't know what they mean by on this particular picture. But what she's talking about is this spot right here. Now you see how it's at an angle. If the shirt was folded upwards, this mark would be more this way. Now, if it was folded sideways, she could have an argument. But what a lot of people think, even Kester thinks that this right here is an imprint from the knife, and this is a straight line she's talking about, as if she had the knife hidden behind her back. So I'm not sure how it would be folded up and leave that kind of mark without leaving a double imprint of this, a double imprint of that down here somewhere. It just doesn't look like it had been folded or crumpled to me.
That part of it was exposed and the other parts weren't. And it gives you that straight line appearance because it was laying in blood that was in a straight line.
Right. And that could have been from the collar area where it was saturated in blood.
Or the whole front of it that was still dripping off blood into the baggie. But the straight line came from the baggie.
Or the front, yeah. Could be either.
So, but it's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible to tell other than it in any interpretation because the shirt is so badly contaminated.
That shirt's not contaminated. There'd be all kinds
And
of
others have.
Right, and the guy who collected it, another person. Sorry, this really drives me mental about this case. He was another person, someone that had handled one of the most important pieces of evidence in this case, did not testify. He didn't testify. Why not? Why?
Well, the defense had the chance to have anyone sit on a stand and testify. They could call anybody they want to. They could have even called Dana, since she was there at the house and had left a few hours before these murders and had been there an extended period of time. They chose not to ask Dana any questions, the defense or the prosecution. Now, had the prosecution called her up to the stand, if it was me, like they had me set as a witness for the state. And when they brought me in for deposition, I told them, I said, I know why you don't want me in the courtroom, is why you've called, you put me down as a witness for the state. You don't want me in the courtroom because they were watching my Facebook at first. And I know damn well that if they would have called me to sit on the stand, because I told them, I said, I will not testify against my son. I won't. I didn't know anything anyway. If I knew something, it'd be different. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to sit up there and testify against my son. So if they would have put Dana on the stand, she most likely would have took the fifth if she was a witness for the state. But they could have brought Dana to the stand. I mean, the person that sat next to that window and asked out of it and left it open didn't come into court to testify to that. Think about it. Because she would have broke down.
Why are there so many people in this case that claimed, that did important tasks, did like with important evidence? Why did they not testify?
Yeah, Danny could have also testified as to how long her and Darren, what, how long it took them to get her back home. She could have testified to that. She could have testified to lots of things. She could have countered Beija's testimony,
Because Mulder was not prepared. He hadn't picked through this case like we have but we've had 25 years to look at the evidence and to look at exterior players and say somebody else who collected this, who did that in order to have entered this into court. Where's our chain of custody? You have to start digging
Where
through the
is the chain
paperwork,
of
the
custody?
trial.
And that's why you have room for appeals on a death row or a death penalty case. You have plenty of room for appeals to come up with these things that you guys come up with. And everything she's done on appeal has come right back to her.
How was the evidence preserved? How do we scientifically call this a just uh, uh,
Right, that should have been
conclusion?
thrown out of court. It should have been. Obviously, it can't be, because that is a vital piece of evidence, even for the defense. Her shirt is a vital piece.
It's fun when Tara talks. It seems like I'm making fun, but I actually enjoy listening to the accents of people that come from the UK. I think they sound very intelligent. They can be talking about the dumbest thing in the world, and they sound so smart and cool and crisp.
Piece of evidence, but at the same time, like over here in the UK, if you had that sort of lack of chain of custody, contamination, it just would not even make it into court. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Right, and they could have taken all that up on appeal, but they never have raised it as an issue.
Well, first of all, Doug Moeller had stated in a comment to the press that a lot of the crime scene evidence was contaminated. And he was right. It was. They're putting bloody items into the same bag with other bloody items, wet bloody items, mind you. That's cross contamination. None of that stuff should have ever been admitted as evidence in light of that. None of it.
Right, and Doug Moeller could have objected to it as a piece of and had it removed if that was the case. If he could have proved that it was cross contaminated, that would be the case, but he never objected to any of that stuff being put into evidence.
And I mean, it's just no good. No matter what you test, you will always have that complaint that it was cross contaminated. Now, Malvy Moon says the experts didn't testify because Doug Mulder lied and said that there was no funding to pay those experts, but the experts were already paid by the court appointed lawyers who first took her case.
I'm not talking about experts. I'm not talking about experts. I'm talking about police personnel. Like these people actually collected evidence. They're supposed to collect it and preserve it. I'm not talking about experts. Yeah, we all know that Doug Mulder didn't call experts, and mainly was either because he thought he had a slam dunk and they'd never get Darlie on the little flimsy evidence they did have.
Or he knew that those two experts would get tore up on the stand, and he knew he didn't have enough to make Darlie seem innocent, which is why he pulled the theatrics with the whole Jimmy Patterson and Chris Frost taking of the fifth.
Have, or it was to do with the whole money situation. He didn't want to fork out for anything that would cost him any more money. But I'm talking about like responders, first responders. These are people that claim to, like, if we go back to the whole luminol testing, right? These are people that never testified, yet they supposedly were the head of the crime scene unit, or they were.
That's right. The defense could have called them anytime they wanted to. They sure could have. Why not? They didn't want to. They didn't want to compound the physical evidence with testimony regarding the physical evidence.
Were police personnel. They were all first responders. Why didn't they testify?
Why didn't Mulder call? Because he didn't want to pound it into their jury's brains that, hey, we've got all this evidence that points right at Darlie, and here's the people that collected it.
Or they took the fifth.
To me, this is a.
Or they took the fifth. And Rich, this is only 2 years ago. You say, man, they took the fifth, and you sit back all as if you put something out there, but you didn't, because they didn't take the fifth on the evidence. They never took the fifth on the evidence.
Prosecutorial thing. The prosecution chose not to use them people to testify because they knew.
Oh, no. It's not about the prosecution. See, the prosecution can put the report out there, and if the defense has a problem with whatever report it is that Nabors or anybody, whatever piece of evidence that they put in, they got it from David Nabors. If the defense had a problem with it, they could call them up to the stand to make them explain it. If the defense thought they could, let's say that let's say Doug Mulder feels like the photographs are or the photographs are mediocre at best in this crime scene. So let's say he calls. I think David Nabors took the video. Let's say Mulder calls Dave Nabors up to the stand about the video. Well, why'd you use such outdated and why blah blah blah? If Dave Nabors was to come back and say, hey, what do you not see in this video that was at that crime scene? It can make the defense weaker by calling on these investigators that studied the scene up to the stand to question them. Just like it wouldn't be really a good idea for any defendant to take the stand in their own defense, because then the prosecution has a chance to tear them apart. That works the same way for the defense. So one might ask, why didn't the defense call any of these people, Tara?
Knew it weakened their case. because they picked and choose. They pick the prosecution's the one that chooses who to put on initially, right?
No, the prosecution chooses who they're going to put on. The defense has a chance to call witnesses, and they put things in certain order. They do. They the defense works the same way. They want to put this person on first because they want to drive this point home. Then this person after that. It works both ways. The defense can call whoever they want.
They decided that anyone, like that was going to bias their case in favour of Darlie, and that's why they didn't call them, because there's no way that someone that
I don't believe that. I believe exact opposite. I believe that the reason the defense didn't call any of those people is because it would have compounded the case against Darlie. Because there was nothing in that now. I give them a little credit. They have a little leeway in this mishandling of evidence. It's not extreme, but it's not ideal either. So I'll give them a little bit of that, but it doesn't mess up any of the evidence. Just it could have. I don't think it did.
collects one of the most important pieces of evidence in the whole case just doesn't testify. And actually, I think it was one of the other
Yeah, Tara. As an outsider, somebody who doesn't know you that well, use of the word actually. Take a look at that.
ambulance drivers testified, even though probably is more hearsay, but he testified that Zimmerman, that was his name, the guy who took the shirt back to the fire station, he testified the guy had police training.
Well, I thought you said they didn't testify.
So why didn't these people testify? Why didn't Nabors testify? He was the actual crime scene manager. He was like head of the crime scene.
Now wait a minute. Either Jimmy Patterson was the lead detective, or you know, Dave Nabors at the time was the sergeant of crime scene and collections, I believe. Why didn't he testify? Because Doug Mulder never called him to. Doug Mulder never saw something in uh, his way of getting the stuff collected and analyzed. Doug Mulder didn't see anything wrong with it to bring him up to defend it.
But he can go on TV and he can say, "Oh, we did this luminol testing and it showed up like a, lit up like a circus," and he can say all this stuff. But the guy did not testify.
So he wasn't asked to. Danelle can get up there on 2020 and tell everybody that Darlie lost 50% of her blood, and she didn't testify. Danelle can get up there and try and tell you what the word superficial means, when we all know that it means a minor wound. She tried to change the definition of it. David Nabors wasn't called to the stand. If he would have been called to, nobody got together and said, "Don't call him." Mm-mm. They didn't need to. The state didn't. The defense should have.
And pardon my French, that guy's also an asshole. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
That as
Well,
well,
I
but
think
the
it's
fact
hard.
that he hasn't.
Why is David Nabors an asshole? Rich, why is David Nabors an asshole? You tell me. Have you ever had a conversation with him? Because I have. I've had a few conversations with him. And he doesn't seem like an asshole to me. So why would you character assassinate one of the investigators in this case, Rich? Why would you do that? David Nabors is an asshole. What, did you hang out with him somewhere and discover that he's an asshole? Or did he put away your Darlie?
Opinions. He
Would
has
be
opinions on, oh, she should die, she should do this. He has all these opinions, but Why didn't you testify? If you're a professional, you're meant to be the whole.
Because he wasn't called to testify. You think he's gonna go knock on the lawyer's door and say, "Hey, I'm gonna testify. And this is what I'm gonna testify to." He wasn't called to. So you take that up with Doug Mulder.
Crime scene manager, you're meant to have done this, that, and the other. Why did you not testify to any of this? Why are you happy to go on TV?
You think about it like this too: the prosecution had no intention of calling James Patterson to the stand. He was called to the stand by the defense because they thought they could get that theatrics in there.
TV and spout all this nonsense, but you never take the stand. To me, that's yeah, he still does it now, and that
Mm-hmm.
is like that's just disgraceful. I'm
Why
sorry.
is it disgraceful? Why? Danelle does it.
I'm going to tell you, let me tell you something about Detective Nabors, folks. Some of you may know this already, some of you may not. But this man told a journalist, and it wasn't all that long ago, I said within the last decade, quote, I will be there when they execute Darlie. I want to see them put that needle in her arm and kill her. I want to watch it. Now, I don't know what kind of sick SOB he really is. Because first of all, I'm against the death penalty, no matter what you do, and because of this case is why I'm against death penalty. There was a time I was for the death penalty. But no matter what they do, even if Darlie did it, no matter what they do to her, they're not going to bring those boys back. And all you're doing is making more victims.
I agree with them here on the consensus of the death penalty, but for argument's sake, to get that get that old mean word out. But I agree that it does not bring the victims back, and I stand firm on nobody wants to see an innocent woman die. We don't. I don't know the interview that he's talking about, but David Nabors is very firm about justice for the boys, Devin and Damon. From the few conversations I've had with him, their names come up and how they were done wrong come up, and it's not usually me that brings it up. So it's just like Greg Davis said, she richly deserves to die for this crime. When you give somebody the death penalty, there's nothing. This is a society that has the death penalty. So him expressing his opinion on that, because to him she had the same kind of thoughts about Devin and Damon. I want to kill them. I want them out of the way. They could just not exist.
By, killing other people, period, plain and simple. However, I've seen this guy on several different interviews. He just looks like a real nasty individual. I've never talked to him, never met him, don't want to either. I'd love for him to come on the show.
He's a nice guy. Very professional.
Me and Tara and Annie, I'm sure, could have a heyday with him on here, but none of them won't come on here. I've wanted Greg Davis to come on here for a long time. Greg
They don't come on my channel because they don't want to do that.
Davis's ex-brother-in-law is actually very good friends of my family. But I know Greg Davis knows what I do and why I do it. I know he does. I'd love for him to come on here. I've invited him to come on here. He won't come on here.
How did you invite him to come on here? Why would he want to come and argue with you? Why would he want to come on my page even though I'm sticking up for him like he's some kind of hero? Why? Why would he want to? He's already made his point. He made his point back in, January '97. He made his point loud and clear.
we'd tear them to pieces, and it wouldn't take very long to do it.
Oh God. Well, then why don't you have me on there and tear me to pieces, all of you? Rich, you got your non-supporters blocked. You're doing private videos and then later putting them out. You're answering questions where non-supporters don't have a chance to respond to you. And like I said, your comments are turned off. But you take out the lead, this district attorney that prosecuted her. You three would do that? You can't even handle us that weren't in the courtroom. I'm just an Ohio redneck with a past that's not all that good. You avoid us. Why do you avoid us? But you could take out Greg Davis. Oh, I'll leave that there. I think it's second.
But he's another asshole, by the way.
Oh, that's another one that put away your poor Darlie. Why is he an asshole? Has he did his job? Maybe when you're putting in a driveway next door to some people that are trying to sleep, they think you're a fucking asshole for making all that noise, right? But you still got to do your job. You still got to lay that perfect driveway. Right? 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Pardon my French.
Chat here.
I'm going to let that go. Remember, this is what we learned from this. David Nabors is an asshole. Greg Davis is an asshole. The prosecution should have called every single person up to the stand. The defense, don't worry about them, though. That's the three things that I...
When the mama sang us to sleep, but now it's just